When federal agents go undercover these days, there's often more than one. That's how you end up with at least 5 FBI agents and informants in a tiny right-wing militia in Michigan, supposedly plotting to kidnap the governor, only to find out there were more informants and undercover agents than kidnappers. And in April 1991, according to senior counterterrorism expert J.M. Berger, agents posed as members of an invented racist militia group called the Veterans Aryan Movement, whose cover story was that they robbed armored cars to buy weapons and support their extremist ideology. But it's not just the right. The FBI also has a history of infiltrating left-wing groups, like Occupy Cleveland. 6 anarchists were arrested in 2012 for plotting to blow up a bridge in Ohio, but in court it emerged they were led by an FBI informant. And when we started looking into the role of government agents and informants on January 6, it seemed as if there wasn't much political will to find real answers. Wherever there was trouble to be found outside the Capitol on January 6, there was also a decent chance you could find Ray Epps.
We are going to the Capitol!
The self-declared Trump supporter from Arizona wasn't just directing people.
The Capitol's this direction.
He was at the first main breach around 12:52 p.m. with what the Department of Justice described in the statement of offense from his case as the vanguard of rioters, trespassing on restricted grounds, and whispering into the ear of a man named Ryan Samsel, who's in prison for what he did seconds later. Then Epps joined the flood of rioters who stormed through the downed barricades and breached the first line of defense, according to the DOJ. A short way down the path, when rioters took down more barricades, the DOJ said Epps continued to penetrate the restricted grounds and headed for the West Plaza, also a restricted area. Thanks to his tall frame and red hat, you can make him out amidst the crowd at these barriers, where he is once again in the first group to break through and get past the police. After that, he's seen all along the defensive police line, walking up and down and here and there, part commander, part peacemaker.
They're not the enemy. Appreciate you guys. If I could keep them off the steps, is that okay? What?
As noted by the media, the DOJ, and the January 6 committee, who have all come to the defense of Ray Epps. And there's one thing that hasn't come up as much in interviews or under oath.
We have video of Ray Epps holding up this huge MAGA sign, steel MAGA sign, and he's actually helping push it. Some of the men who were touching that sign, they're in prison today.
Jim Hoft runs the Gateway Pundit, an online news site that's been a thorn in the side of progressives and establishment censors ever since he started blogging some 20 years ago, when the internet was still fairly new. Few have devoted as much time to covering January 6 as Hoft and his team of reporters, who've published well over 1,000 stories in 2.5 years. He told us they were one of the first to report on the possibility, still unconfirmed, that Ray Epps may be an informant.
A couple of these guys touched it because it went over their head and they didn't want to get hit in the head. It got pushed at police. No police officer was injured, but these people were still sent to prison. So they're in prison today for this. Ray Epps is pushing the sign, and he was never arrested for that, right? So it's just another incident of Ray Epps, this suspicious activity. The media won't report this, but we have the footage and be glad to share it with you.
Hoft did share the footage with us, and you can see the sign going over the crowd, as he described. Here, Epps reached up and touched it for about 10 seconds, and then made this gesture with his hand, signaling toward the Capitol and the police. As the sign passed and changed direction, Epps can be seen on camera, pushing it towards the line of officers, and then joined in pushing the crowd forward. We couldn't ask him about this because he didn't respond to our requests for an interview, and his attorney declined. There's no doubt about Epps touching the sign. That was confirmed by the DOJ and Ray Epps himself in the statement of offense he signed when he pled guilty to a misdemeanor charge for disorderly conduct on restricted grounds in September of this year. It said he touched the sign with both hands and specifically mentioned the hand signal seen on camera, where Epps pointed forward toward the line of officers several times. The government offered no explanation for what that meant and did not address Epps pushing the sign at police, an act that got others charged with various offenses, including assault. Also not in dispute, the fact that Epps was pushing with the crowd. According to the statement, a group of rioters, including Epps, pushed forward, leaning their bodies on each other. Again, no explanation was offered. Ray Epps denies being a source or undercover or anything, says it's all nonsense, not true in the least. His wife says the same, so does his attorney. Why don't you believe him?
Oh, I think it's the strangest story, isn't it? Here you have the January 6th committee. You have the media defending this man who's clearly leading efforts to get people inside the Capitol.
How does anyone prove that someone is a confidential source for law enforcement, whether it's Department of Homeland Security, JTTF, Joint Terrorism Task Force, FBI, ATF, right? Or, as we found out, even TAB? I mean, how do you find out? These agencies are never going to admit it.
I think what's interesting is Ray Epps had threatened to sue some people.
He has sued some people.
He needs to put his money where his mouth is.
In a series of news reports, Houghton the Gateway pundit traced what happened to other protesters who touched the sign and ended up in prison. Brad Smith, who was 24 years old when he was raided by the FBI, got an assault charge and almost 3.5 years for placing his hands on the sign for a few seconds, and a conspiracy charge for texting with friends about saving D.C., according to his mother. One of his friends, Marshall Neef, a young father from Pennsylvania with severe mental health issues, also got close to 3.5 years for, according to the DOJ, carrying a wooden club and participating in hoisting and pushing a large metal sign frame into a defensive line of officers. 30-year-old Thomas Patrick Hamner pled guilty to one charge for grabbing and assisting in throwing the sign and got 30 months. Jose Padilla from Tennessee and Sean McHugh from California both got 6.5 years, or 78 months, for touching the sign and other charges. McHugh, a young father, spent 2 years in prison waiting for his trial. Vietnam vet Howard Richardson and Alan William Biley, both from Pennsylvania, also touched the sign but were imprisoned for unrelated assault charges. 2.5 years later, Ray Epps has yet to set foot in jail, although he could get anything from 0 to 6 months for his misdemeanor charge when sentenced in December. In his plea agreement, the Justice Department cited his lack of criminal convictions as a factor in sentencing. We took a closer look and found no convictions, but our search turned up what appeared to be an outstanding arrest warrant in Pennsylvania from 2015. It was, ironically, for the same crime Epps was urging people to commit at the Capitol, criminal trespass. We contacted the victim named in the arresting officer's report, but have withheld her identity for privacy reasons. She declined to comment, but we did reach the judge in the case, Daniel O'Donnell. Case records showed he signed off on 2 updates, one in July 2022, the other in October of this year. But he stressed the Class C misdemeanor for defiant trespass was minor. Judges in Washington, D.C. seem to have taken a different view. By July this year, they'd sent close to 200 January 6 defendants to prison for trespassing and other charges. Jim Hoft said he's tried to cover as many cases as he can, but it's hard to keep up.
Prosecutions and arrests continue to this day.
Well, what about Ray Epps saying he gets death threats now and he's afraid for his safety?
I think that's tragic. I don't recommend that for anyone. You know, I don't recommend it for you, for conservatives. I don't recommend it for liberals. That's very sad, right? I've had death threats. I know I've had the police come to my door telling me that they got calls from Washington, D.C., and my name is on an Antifa hit list. And so we're going to have somebody sit outside your house for a while because your name is on this list. So I know how that is.
In light of his security concerns, we agreed not to disclose the exact location of Jim Hoft's home in St. Louis, Missouri, where we met. Hoft, now 61, lives with his partner and runs the Gateway Pundit from here. He said it's become one of the biggest online news sites, with almost 3 million page views a day, in spite of the left's best efforts to discredit him and his work.
And I'm following you. You're in
So
charge.
here's the big office. Yep.
The nerve center.
Yeah.
So much for the newsrooms of old, right?
Right. See
This
this
is-
picture there? So my family's from Iowa, and my grandfather in World War I, when on Armistice Day, he put up a flagpole when he was a little boy, and it was in a town called Herring, and everybody moved away from the town. The only thing left today is a flagpole that my grandfather put up, so I bought the town. So I own this plot of land with the flagpole, and those are my little nieces. We did a
You bought
celebration.
the whole town,
Yeah.
but the whole town is just...
A flagpole left. Everything was torn down. Isn't
Where
that a
are
great
you-
little
are you-
Americana story? It's just,
This is you, right? You're in
Yeah.
this picture?
Yeah.
That's you up there?
Hoft showed us some of the footage Gateway Pundit has featured in its reporting. His critics love to say he's far-right fake news, but he'll tell you that's because he's exposing what they don't want known or seen.
this is a slow motion of the actual flashbang grenades being fired into the crowd. Look at this. And these people have no idea that this is about to blow up in their face.
They also don't seem to be doing anything but standing around. Can you go back on
Yeah,
that,
sure.
please, Jim?
They're just standing around. They're not even looking at the police or anything. They're talking to each other. They're conversing. They have no idea what is about to happen to them.
I noticed
And
that.
they're not pummeling cops. They're not spray painting buildings.
What have we learned about January 6th that we learned because of you first? Stories you broke before anyone else.
Well, I know one of our writers, exceptional writer, Cassandra Fairbanks, after Officer Sicknick, she was the first one to talk to the family, and she broke some stories about the officer and about the fire extinguisher. I believe Cassandra was the first one to point out that after speaking with the family, that he wasn't hit.
Which was a really, really big story.
Huge story.
I mean, because the whole narrative of January 6th hinged on Officer Sicknick's death.
Right.
Because he was the only person they claimed had been murdered by protesters.
At that time, yes.
And it was false.
It was completely made up. And not just killed, but he was beaten in the head with a fire extinguisher. I mean, that was her story, and they all ran with it.
Everyone.
Our reporter, Cara Castronova, she interviewed the gentleman who got pushed off the second-story ledge by the police officer. So
That footage is clear as day. There's the balustrade, and people are climbing up there, and a police officer with a blue helmet.
yeah, he could have killed him. He's lucky to be alive. People, had to drag him away.
Was he badly injured?
I think he was injured pretty badly. He didn't want to speak about it because he was afraid he was going to get arrested. So he didn't talk about it for a long time, this guy.
This guy was Derek Vago, a 31-year-old man living in Tennessee who suffered severe foot and spinal injuries and broke his ankle when he hit the ground some 20 feet below. People like him don't usually get to tell their stories to the New York Times, but Jim Hoft will give them a voice and a chance.
Most of these people were poor or middle class or lower middle class These weren't people with a lot of money. These were people who went there for the first time. Of the prisoners that I've spoken with, I spoke with an attorney a week or two ago, and she told me that she believes 90% of these people have attorneys that are appointed to them because they just don't have the money, you know?
So
It's
public
tragic.
defenders.
Yes.
Who are typically left-leaning or far-left in their views.
Was certainly in Washington, D.C. Absolutely. And in most big cities across the country.
So you have people whose politics is the exact opposite of those protesting, representing them in court.
Absolutely.
And somehow
With their
they're
life.
supposed to get a real defense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And we've seen the results of these trials. And it's heartbreaking. And you see a woman who walked through the Capitol with a flag. She's a former social worker. She dealt with addictive people. And she carried the flag, and she has cancer. And they arrest her and put her in jail for 60 days because she walked through the Capitol. What kind of sense does that make in this country? How can anyone who has any integrity say that this was a fair sentence? And she's not the only one. We've seen a lot of people like that.
Would the counter-argument to that be, well, they interrupted an official proceeding and they were part of an insurrection? We don't care what people actually did in the Capitol. It's the fact that they were there where they had no legal right to be.
They can say that, but I mean, you could say the same thing about any Black Lives Matter protest that was going on when they're burning down a building. I mean, these are bogus charges. To me, this is a political hit. It breaks my heart because a lot of these people don't have a pot to piss in. I had mentioned a defendant who just went to court about 2 weeks ago. This defendant is camping because he doesn't have any money to stay in a hotel. And
so he has to come to Washington, D.C. to
for
face
his trial.
But he has to pay to get himself there. And he has to
pay to eat or stay somewhere. And I put up the story, and it's heartbreaking. To me, it's absolutely heartbreaking. This is sort of my background. 9 kids in a Catholic family in Iowa. My father was always struggling. He owned a business. I can relate to these sorts of things. I can relate to running out of gas, and walking to the gas station and things like that. That's my background. We put up a Gifts and Go forum, and I'm very proud of this. These stories make me the most happy. And that is that our audience, God bless them, raised $29,000 for this guy in 24 or 36 hours. $29,000 they donated so he could stay in a hotel. Well, obviously that's going to cover more than a hotel. Probably more money than this guy's ever seen in his life.
Do you think those people on January 6th were framed?
Oh, absolutely. Not a one of them was there to plan an insurrection. The people were there to protest the election. And I think the only organized activity that day came from many of these who I believe are operatives. Will we ever know everything? Probably not, but I think there's enough evidence there right now to definitively prove that the government and several agencies were involved in the violence that day.
How does that absolve people of the violence that took place and so on?
Well, that's a great question. I think it's very evident from the video. So it's not just that they admitted that they had people in the crowd, but we have video now from some of the operatives. There was one operative, a female operative. She's got a megaphone, and she's, telling people on the way, walking over to the Capitol, we're going inside. We're going inside.
He's talking about this woman, Megan Paradise, number 9 on the FBI wanted list, and seen here holding a baseball she reportedly stole from Nancy Pelosi's office inside the Capitol. Hoft has dubbed her the female Ray Epps because, like Epps, she went too far for others in the crowd who immediately pushed back.
If a woman tells you to charge the line, never charge the line. No, dude, she's up there saying, we need to go. It's like, what are you talking about?
Don't listen to her.
And like Epps, made a reference to getting arrested.
I'll get arrested too, and I don't care. I need people to be with me.
Yet she's never been locked up.
Dude, this lady's like an agent for provocateur.
And Paradise was not the only one. This man was identified as Luke Philip Robinson by the far-left site Sedition Hunters, who've been relentless in pursuing January 6 suspects. He was photographed with an earpiece and dubbed #GingerGun because he was caught on camera carrying a weapon, his pistol exposed when his shirt got stuck on the back of the grip. That made him one of the few supposed protesters who came armed to the Capitol, which after 9/11 was designated a counter-terrorism zone and has a higher level of security by law, more stringent than the Federal District of Washington, D.C., which has the most restrictive gun laws in the nation. Yet like Ray Epps, Robinson was removed from the FBI suspects list and has remained a free man. We traced him through public documents to a business that started in Tennessee and is now based in Arizona. That's where he was in this footage from the JFK report when confronted by another January 6th defendant, Micajah Jackson.
You had an earpiece and a firearm, man. You had a firearm on federal property. That's serious stuff.
He appeared uncomfortable and did not answer any of his questions.
What's with the earpiece at the Capitol? Who were you talking to?
I'll see you guys later.
Who were you talking to, though?
You actually want to buy this bike or not?
No, thank you.
According to at least 8 ballistic experts and arms dealers we consulted, the gun he was carrying appeared from what was visible to be a SIG 320 and either the M17 or M18 model. On their website, SIG said it was specifically built for the U.S. military. We reached out to the DOJ and the FBI for comment, but we're still waiting for a response.
What have you learned so far?
We're tracking down different ideas and theories, and one of those theories was that there were undercover law enforcement officers in the crowds. We know that to be true. Some would have a reason to be there, but there's also been speculation that there were federal agents or local law enforcement that were encouraging people to go in the Capitol.
Congressman Barry Loudermilk from Georgia's 11th Congressional District has been on the Hill for almost a decade. He's the chair of the House Administration's subcommittee investigating the investigators, trying to get to the bottom of the security failures around January 6.
And there was one video clip that had made it out in public that some people had claimed this was definitely a police officer. We verified that to be true.
This is the clip recorded on the body cam of the undercover officer in question.
I've never seen anything like this.
He can be heard chanting,
USA! USA! USA!
Yeah. They're throwing shit all everywhere.
And at times urging the crowd to advance.
Go! Go! Let's go! Go!
It's tear gas. It's tear gas.
The committee has not made his name public yet, but he was identified to defense attorneys as Officer Nicholas Tomasula.
We've already been able to confirm, yes, this was a Metropolitan Police officer.
Undercover.
Undercover.
Who was doing what?
He was, at one point, he was helping people climb up the scaffolding, because remember, out on the West Terrace, the scaffolding was being built for the inauguration. He was helping people get up the scaffolding and telling them, go, 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 keep going, keep going.
Come on, go, go, go! Keep going, keep going!
Well, according to what police told the New York Times and other reporters right after January 6, people used that scaffolding to get to the Upper West Terrace.
Right.
And they defined that as a critical access point that day. So if you have an undercover police officer assisting people in climbing up there, that doesn't sound insignificant.
No, it isn't. Now, the next question is, what was he doing, right? Why was he telling those people to go?
And why was he there?
And why was he there?
And
that's
who told
key
him
question.
To be there? Who put him there?
Exactly. Now, could it be he's trying to get up to the top to help, right? He's got other officers there, and so he's just telling them, go, 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 I'm trying to get up there. But the fact is, when he gets up there, he doesn't help. He just turns and walks away from the Capitol.
So he's encouraging and assisting other people to get in,
That's what it appears
but he
that's
doesn't
happening.
go in.
Yeah.
Loudermilk, a 59-year-old Air Force veteran, told us he doesn't like leaks, and he's played his cards close to his chest intentionally.
There's a video that has police officers on the west side by the fountain yelling at each other, and one of them says, "We're hurting innocent people." And they say, for every one we're pulling out, we're making 10 angrier.
You're hitting with a lot of pain compliance when you're hitting innocent people.
And not only that, we're
we're taking out one and 10 of them are getting angrier. We're multiplying them by hitting them.
You know, when you listen to that, you have the sense that the officers were set up for failure as much as the protesters.
Yeah. And we've got a video of officers saying we were set up.
They set us the fuck up. That's what they did. They set us up. They set up 64. Oh, absolutely. And then they asked y'all to come 2 hours later. They set us up. They needed everybody right away. Nah, right away. They set us the fuck up. So now we ain't got shit. There was no way hell was holding that game. We ain't got a motherfucking thing. They set us the fuck up.
That's one of the things that we want to know. What do they mean by that? What exactly do you mean that you were set up? Because there's a lot of interpretations.
Are you investigating the possibility that instigators and other people inserted themselves in the crowd and took action to provoke the crowd and to provoke the police? So they were provoking both sides.
I mean, there was definitely that there. I don't know who they are. We're looking into that. But, you know, you're talking about the great contrast. You've got the people over here that when we do have audio are saying, hey, we appreciate you guys, you know, talking to law enforcement.
Yes, protesters in the midst of the violence saying we're on your side.
Yeah, and then we've got other folks that have steel pipes that are, you know, beating officers with it.
So when has that ever happened at a Trump rally?
Never.
For the congressman, it's somewhat personal after being falsely accused of leading a surveillance mission inside the Capitol the day before January 6. He said the truth has to get out, and subpoenas may be next.
What have you learned about what really happened that day that you didn't know at the time?
Well, first I've learned about pain.
All I said, I put my hands up. I said, don't touch me, please. Don't hurt me, please. I said, and he's like, I'll do whatever the hell I want to you. And I said, I have constitutional rights. Please don't. He's like, you don't have any rights in here.